Welcome back to my YouTube channel slash podcast slash I don't know what my channel is anymore. It's just a whole lot of stuff. But anywho, today's podcast is going to be about the genocide that happened in Rwanda. And this is something I feel like a lot of people kind of just forgot, but it's something that I'm never gonna forget. I remember when I was a child, when I watched the movie Hotel Rwanda, that's what it was called. I don't know if you guys watched it. I think it's on Netflix still, but yeah, pretty much covers the genocide that happened there, and it was pretty disgusting, to be honest. Like, the way that people were slaughtered, it was unbelievable. And I do apologize in advance. Like, my channel, I have people like been saying that my channel is a little dark. I don't think it's dark, to be honest, but yeah, I have covered, like, you know, the alligator bait one, you know, the topic with Israel and Palestine, and like showing casualties. But I'm like, that's honestly, like, I'm not saying it's the best way to bring in awareness, but sometimes you have to show the dark truth for people to wake up. If we're not seeing the dark truth, how we ever gonna know what's going on, you know? So yeah, but moving on, gonna move on to this documentary that I watched. But first off, I just want to say again, all praises and thanks to our Lord, the greatest, the one who's rotating this whole universe. And it's just crazy how much we forget about him, you know? Like, I know we pray to him, and I know we thank him for stuff, but I feel like everything should be wrapped around him, you know? Like, every conversation we should always invoke his name, you know? But that's just, you know, how I am. I'm not saying I'm the most religious person, I'm not perfect, but God is so important to me. And before I start every video, I always pray to God that these videos that I put out will spark a change and not just spark hatred or, you know, prejudice or racism. Like I said, because my topic's been very sensitive lately. So yeah, so I'll say thank you guys again for clicking on this video. Let's get straight into it. So one of the largest murders in history, the Rwanda Genocide, was started by a political assassination. But I don't think it was started from a political assassination, you know what I mean. Like, a lot of times, you know, history repeats itself. Genocides are just not just random occurrences. A lot of times these genocides are done to fulfill certain agendas, you know. But that's just me. So a government-backed campaign of mass murder in Rwanda began on April 7, 1994. So the goal was to ethnically exterminate a powerful minority group. Hundreds of thousands of ethnic Tutsis and others who supported them were killed by Hutu extremists. So I really wonder if this genocide or this Tutsi/Hutu hate was like fostered by colonialism, because yeah, people live together in harmony. I'm not saying all tribes like always lived in harmony, but Africa was a harmonious place. And like I said, I know there was kings and queens and there was a lot of clashing, but a lot of times tribes, they saw each other as humans. But when this tragedy happened, the people who were being killed weren't seen as human, they were seen as subhuman. So again, in the fastest ever genocide documented, at least 800,000 people were killed in just 100 days. During this tragic period, 6 people were murdered every minute. People including women, children, you know, and old and elderly. So as people were urged to murder their neighbors, dead bodies piled up the sides of the roads. And yeah, literally people were influenced to go out and kill the opposite ethnic group. And if you guys don't believe me, search it up. There was literally radio stations like that were just like on loudspeakers in people's communities saying, hey, go and kill. Like, it's really sad. Like, I didn't believe it, to be honest, until I saw it myself, and I'm like, man, like, I just can't imagine being Rwandan during that time. Like, it's very scary, you know. So like, no one was spared, and I mean no one.
This is what so much of Rwanda has been turned into. Houses, villages deserted, every few yards a dead body, and everywhere the stench of death.
Hey, like, I watched a lot of videos growing up about that genocide, and yeah, people recorded people being macheted, and you can hear the sounds of machete hitting skulls. Man, as a kid, I was searching up a lot of stuff, and sometimes I wish I haven't, but as I got older, it kind of motivated me to be the person who I am today, you know, to speak for those whose lives have been lost, you know. So moving on. So the violence broke out in front of the eyes of the world, and like everyone across the world was watching people being slaughtered left to right with no governmental like assistance from anyone. And even though everyone was aware of what was going on, the international community chose to ignore Rwandans to face this dark chapter in their history. However, this racial division that drove the massacre had not just appeared out of nowhere. Like, people just thought this out of nowhere, like this massacre just happened. Like, no, history is interesting. You have to look at what happened in the past. The conflict has its roots in Rwanda's colonial history. Rwanda is a tiny nation about 5 times smaller than the state of New York. Germany and Belgium ruled it, and in 1962 it became independent. But you know, countries never become independent after you've been colonized for so long. They just say you're independent, but my opinion, you know. So 85% of its estimated 7 million residents in 1994 belonged to the Hutu ethnic group, and of those 1% were Twa and 14% were Tutsi. Although Hutus and Tutsis are 2 different ethnic groups, they share many characteristics. They have comparable customs, they reside in the same places, and they speak the same language. However, since the colonial era, tensions between the majority Hutu and the minority Tutsi have significantly increased. The Belgian colonists intensified the divisions between the 2 groups when they arrived in 1916. So like when the Belgians came, they were making all these racist theories about like the Tutsis, and they were saying that the Tutsis and the Hutus were like very different genetically, and like they were just like establishing like this categorization of Rwandan people based on their ethnicity. So like Rwandans were all one people, but when the Belgians came, they were like doing these experiments and tests on them to show how they are different from one another and not the same, to cause some type of tension. I'm not sure. So basically the Belgians categorized individuals based on conventional physical attributes. So based on these classifications, a racial identity card was issued to each individual. These images from the 1930s of a Belgian specialist demonstrate the use of body measurements and craniofacial analysis to categorize Rwandans according to the ethnicity. So subsequently, during the genocide, these classifications were crucial in locating and eliminating Tutsis. So the Tutsis were preferred by the Belgians, who saw them as superior to the Hutus and more similar to the Europeans, guaranteeing them better jobs and educational opportunities. So that's pretty interesting. So the Belgians come, they colonize, they say, hey, the Tutsis, you guys are more similar to us, so yeah, we're gonna give you guys better jobs and educational opportunities. And the Hutus, oh, they're different, they're not like us, they're subhuman. So again, like, it's interesting how when you change the narrative about a people, so much stuff can happen. So the Hutus' discontent grew over time as a result of this prejudice, culminating in a wave of riots, murders, and a mass migration of Tutsis to nearby nations. So this caused a big wave, like, yeah, a really big wave. So moving on, Hutus won Rwanda's first elections following independence in 1962, shifting the balance of power in the nation. But this was also like, it was a good thing, but also a bad thing to you-know-who, like, yeah. Hutu nationalism characterized the regime that took power after it, and violence persisted in the decades that followed. So the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which is also the RPF, which is a rebel army primarily made up of exiled Tutsis, began attacking Uganda in 1990 with the intention of overthrowing the Hutu-led government. Following a period of conflict, the RPF and the president of Rwanda, Juvenal Habyarimana, signed a peace accord in 1993. However, many on both sides disagreed with the agreement, which is why the violence did not end. So the events of April 6, 1994 served as the last straw, like literally served as the last nail in the coffin. Hutu president was slain when his plane was shot down in Kigali, which is the country's capital. So yeah, he was in the airplane, and supposedly they don't know who shot it down, but they shot it down and they killed the president of Rwanda. So despite the lack of confirmation regarding who carried out the attack, Hutus viewed this as an opportunity to like retaliate or to like, you know, I guess fulfill their agenda. Who knows what happened, but when the president was killed, this caused a very bad shockwave. So the Rwandan Presidential Guard launched a retaliation campaign right away, and the killing of moderate Hutus and Tutsis started. So extremist Hutus known as the Akazu were able to seize important government positions and start ethnic cleansing across Rwanda. So armed with guns and machetes, Hutu militias known as the Interahamwe went from village to village executing Tutsis. Militias used a radio station to urge people to go and kill their neighbors, and they encouraged citizens to join. So again, I said earlier that this is like not a lie. This was true. Like, yeah, on loudspeakers all over Rwanda, they were just telling people go and slaughter in the name of your nation. But I don't think these were real Rwandan people. I think these people were, for like my opinion, were paid, you know, to like behave in such a manner, because yeah, Africa is such a beautiful country, and the people there, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't act in this way. But like I said, it's my opinion. History is so interesting. So the human cost was enormous, and thousands of children were left orphaned. Bodies littered the streets, and refugees and the displaced were starving. The people that died from hunger was crazy. Like, there was like videos and pictures of them like skeletons. They were alive, but literally had no nutrition, and there was like no governmental assistance. It was really interesting. And when the Hutu regime was overthrown by the RPF in July 1994, the genocide came to an end. Thank goodness, but damage is already done. However, it had a long-lasting effect that extended to neighboring countries. So, and I just want to talk about right now how the international community failed Rwandans. Like, where were they at, you know? So the UN Security Council was aggressively like told by the United States to like not deploy soldiers when the genocide was going on. Like, why would you do that, you know? Sometimes all it takes is to show up with weapons and it will literally stop a genocide from happening. But no, we rather watch, you know? So the UN peacekeepers on the ground were whittled down to just 260 in April 1994 following the deaths of peacekeepers. So the peacekeepers are basically like soldiers who the UN sent with weapons in these areas to like bring peace, but a lot of times they were killed and slaughtered. If you guys watched the movie The Hotel in Rwanda, it was brutal. Like, it was brutal. So the former US President Bill Clinton acknowledged years after the Rwandan genocide that the biggest regret as a president was not acting in this genocide. Why you say that? Like, why did you take so long? Like, why didn't you not act? Like, you knew you was gonna regret this later, like, but yet you just sit there and watch and just act like you care by regretting it years and years later when already 800,000 people were killed. So interesting how genocide is like a seed that is planted and later comes in fruition as time goes. Like, I don't want to connect this with Israel and Palestine because like these were two different events that happened, but as you guys can see, in the beginning there was this dehumanization of a people, and as years go by you can pretty much do whatever you want, because when you start dehumanizing people start believing in that dehumanization. And what, like my podcast I brought up yesterday on how we can change our narrative, but when people control your narrative, bloodshed and genocides can happen. So I just find history very interesting, how it first starts with like this dehumanization, then it starts with like making everybody believe that these people are subhuman, and then after that you know what happens next. So it's just very interesting. But yeah, I just want to cut it short here. I don't want to drag too long. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this, and you know, God bless the souls of those who just died, you know, like, and just God bless those who died from genocide. You know, genocide is something that is more prevalent now. We're seeing it happen a lot, whether it's recorded or not, whether it's censored or not. Every country is going through their stuff, you know, like there's always people suffering. So it's just very interesting at the end of the day. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna try to make another podcast tomorrow, but I just feel like this week I'm just gonna cover just genocides, since we're seeing what's going on right now in Palestine and Israel. I'm gonna be doing a whole lot of research to see what other countries that I can cover, you know. But yeah, just want to say God bless and thank you guys so much for watching this video. Farewell.